This is the story of how one letter of the Greek alphabet almost destroyed Christianity. One letter, the iota. In Alexandria, Egypt, one of the most powerful cities in the ancient world, a priest named Arius said something that would consume the Roman Empire for over 60 years, exile bishops, topple theologians, and force an emperor to choose sides in a debate about the very nature of God. Christianity had only recently been legalized. Just 5 years earlier, Constantine the Great issued the Edict of Milan, ending centuries of persecution. Churches were being built, bishops were gaining political influence. And in Alexandria, Egypt, one of the most vibrant and cosmopolitan cities in the ancient world, Arius was about to light a fuse that no one could put out. Arius was a Libyan-born presbyter of Berber descent who had studied under Lucian of Antioch, where he absorbed ideas about the subordination of the Son to the Father. By all accounts, he was extraordinarily charismatic. He was learned, confident, and unyielding. But what made him dangerous, at least to his opponents, was that he was popular. Arius didn't just preach from a pulpit. He wrote poetry. He composed songs. He set his theology to popular melodies so that sailors, dock workers, and young people on the streets of Alexandria could sing his ideas back to each other. Around 323, he compiled these works into a book called the Thalia, meaning the banquet. The central idea of that banquet was this: Jesus Christ, the Son of God, was created. He had a beginning. There was a time when the Son did not exist. As Arius himself put it, if the Father begat the Son, he that was begotten had a beginning of existence. From this, it's evident that there was a time when the Son was not. This wasn't a fringe idea. It drew on a long tradition of Alexandrian scholarship and Neoplatonic philosophy, which emphasized the absolute, singular oneness of God. To Arius, saying that the Son was co-equal with the Father compromised that oneness. It introduced two gods where there should be one, and frankly, a lot of people agreed with him, but his bishop did not. Alexander of Alexandria was furious. Around 320, he convened a synod of roughly 100 bishops, and they did something dramatic. They condemned Arius and excommunicated him from the church in Alexandria. But Arius had allies, powerful ones. Eusebius of Nicomedia, who was related to the imperial family, took up his cause. So did Eusebius of Caesarea, the great church historian. Arius was exiled from Alexandria, but he was far from silenced. And that's when Constantine enters the picture. The emperor had just unified the Roman Empire after years of civil war. The last thing he needed was a theological dispute, fracturing the institution he was counting on to help hold everything together. Constantine reportedly said, "Division in the church is worse than war." At first, he sent his personal religious advisor, Hosius of Cordova, to Alexandria to sort things out. Constantine viewed the entire dispute as, in his words, insignificant, a minor disagreement between intellectuals. He was spectacularly wrong. When Hosius failed to broker peace, Constantine did something unprecedented. He called a council, not a local synod, not a regional meeting, but an empire-wide gathering of bishops, the first of its kind in Christian history. The location was Nicaea, in modern-day Turkey. The date was May 20th, 325 AD. Around 220 bishops attended, the vast majority from the Eastern churches. Only about 8 representatives came from the West. Rome itself sent just 2 presbyters. Many of these bishops still bore scars on their bodies from the persecutions that had ended only a decade earlier. These were men who had suffered for their faith, and they weren't inclined toward compromise. Constantine himself presided over the opening session in the great hall of his palace. At one of the early meetings, he pulled a remarkable stunt. He produced a packet of letters he'd received from many of the bishops present, letters in which they accused each other of false teaching and heresy. He tore them up and threw them into the fire. The message was clear: settle this. And they did, or at least they tried. The council produced the Nicene Creed, which declared that the Son was homoousios with the Father, meaning of the same substance. Not similar, not like, the same. On June 19th, 325, Arius was formally condemned as a heretic and exiled to Illyricum. Out of roughly 300 bishops present, only 2 refused to sign the creed. But here's the critical thing that most people get wrong about Nicaea. It didn't end the controversy, not even close. The popular belief that the doctrine of the Trinity was settled in 325 is a dramatic oversimplification. What followed was half a century of theological instability, political maneuvering, and repeated reversals. The controversy now centered on that single Greek word, homoousios, and the word, it was being contrasted with homoiousios, same substance versus similar substance. A middle party known as the semi-arians or homoousians emerged, arguing for this similar substance position as a compromise between full Arianism and Nicene orthodoxy. The difference between homoousios and homoiousios, one letter, the iota. This is where we get the English expression, it doesn't make one iota of difference. The British historian Thomas Carlyle remarked that Christendom was consumed by a controversy over a diphthong. Edward Gibbon noted with some ridicule that Christianity was nearly split by the smallest letter in the Greek alphabet. But to the people who lived through this, it made all the difference in the world. If Christ is of the same substance as the Father, then he's fully God. If he's merely of similar substance, he's something less. And on that distinction hung the entire architecture of Christian salvation theology. The champion of homoousios, the man who would fight for this idea for nearly half a century, was Athanasius. He'd attended Nicaea as a young deacon alongside Bishop Alexander, and when Alexander died in 328, Athanasius succeeded him as Bishop of Alexandria. He was brilliant, stubborn, and absolutely relentless. He would need to be. Over his 46 years as bishop, Athanasius spent only 17 actually in Alexandria. The rest of the time, he was in exile, 5 separate exiles, ordered by 4 different Roman emperors, including Constantine's son Constantius II, who favored Arianism and worked to reverse his father's policies. His opponents accused Athanasius of theft, murder, assault, interfering with grain shipments to cause famine, and even of killing a bishop named Arsenius and using the dead man's severed hand for magical purposes. Athanasius dramatically revealed at his own trial that the severed hand was still very much attached to a very living Arsenius, but the accusations kept coming. Athanasius against the world became a famous phrase, and for a time, it was literally true. By 357, practically the entire episcopacy of Christendom had repudiated homoousios. And then there's the death of Arius. In 336, after years of exile and negotiation, Arius had been readmitted to the church through a compromise formula. A grand ceremony of rehabilitation was planned in the Cathedral of Constantinople. The day before, Arius marched triumphantly through the streets of the city with his supporters. Then he collapsed and died. He was approximately 80 years old. His supporters were stunned. His opponents called it divine judgment. Modern scholars have suggested poisoning. Athanasius outlived Arius by nearly 4 decades, dying peacefully in Alexandria on May 2nd, 373. But the work of systematizing Trinitarian theology fell to the next generation. The Cappadocian Fathers, Basil of Caesarea, Gregory of Nazianzus, and Gregory of Nyssa, refined and completed the theological framework that Athanasius had defended, developing the precise vocabulary that would define Orthodox Christianity for centuries to come. In 380, Emperor Theodosius issued the Edict of Thessalonica, making Nicene Christianity the official state religion. The following year, at the First Council of Constantinople, 150 bishops gathered to finalize the Trinitarian doctrine. 36 bishops, who denied the divinity of the Holy Spirit, were denied seats at the council. But Arianism didn't simply vanish. It had already spread beyond the empire's borders. The missionary Ulfilas, known as the Apostle to the Goths, had converted the Visigoths to Arian Christianity. From there, it spread to the Vandals, the Ostrogoths, the Gepids, the Lombards, and other Germanic tribes. The Visigoths in Spain remained Arian until 589 AD, more than 2.5 centuries after Nicaea. This year, 2025, marks the 1700th anniversary of the Council of Nicaea. The creed it produced remains the only authoritative statement of Christian faith accepted by the Catholic Church, Eastern Orthodoxy, Oriental Orthodoxy, and most of Protestantism. It's recited every Sunday in churches around the world, 17 centuries after a priest in Alexandria started writing songs about the nature of God, and an emperor tore up a stack of angry letters and told a room full of scarred bishops to figure it out. One letter, one iota, and it changed everything. Now, Arius said the Son of God had a beginning, but what if someone went even further? What if one man looked at the God of the Old Testament and said, "That's not the real God at all"? That's exactly what we're covering next, the story of the alien God, and why one man believed Christianity had been worshiping the wrong deity from the very start.